Hello there. How may I help you today? You need to pick up a few ingredients for brewing a potion? That's no problem. Before I ask what I can help you get, have you ever been here before? You have not. Okay, well, the reason I ask is that here at the Applewood Apothecary, we source all of our own ingredients, so they're going to be a lot fresher and much higher potency than you might be used to working with. So if you've never used our ingredients, you're going to want to use a little less than whatever recipe your brewing says to use. You can always add more later, but it can be very difficult to take ingredients out of a potion once they're in, of course. So, what potion are you brewing? A riches potion? Okay, and whose work is that? Whose recipe are you using? Okay, yes, from the Sage Mage Grimoire. Right, okay, yes, that's actually an excellent recipe, though, again, I would use a little less than what the recipe says. Add more as needed, but when you're first starting, less is more, because our ingredients are, again, very potent. There's a huge difference when you're working with self-sourced, fresh ingredients. So, what is the first item on your list that I can pull from the shelves for you? Oh, yes, of course. I can certainly recommend some substitutes. If there's a few things that you decide you really don't want, I can certainly recommend substitutes. That's why I'm here. Otherwise, we'd just have all the jars out there in a self-serve container. But yes, personal service, I can advise you on substitutions and how much to use, things like that. So, what will you be needing? Powdered unicorn horn. Okay, we do have some of that in stock. Let me see, where is it here? Yes, here we are. So this is a very fine ground powdered unicorn horn. No unicorns are harmed in the making of this. I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that deer shed their antlers every year. Yes, unicorns do the same thing, actually. So sometimes you'll just be walking through an enchanted wood and find a gleaming unicorn horn lying there. And we are actually unicorn watchers. So we often, chart the behavior and movements of groups of unicorns. So we do tend to know where and when their horns are shed, and then we go and we collect them and grind them up to make the little ingredients for our little apothecary here, which we can then pass on to you for all of your magical needs. What would be a substitute if you didn't want to use the unicorn horn? Well, you can also use stardust. Ground stardust from a fallen star. Often has a lot of the same properties. However, when it comes to unicorn horn, it is one of those ingredients that can be very difficult to do substitutions for, so unless you have a specific reason for not using unicorn horn, I would recommend going right for the unicorn horn. You think you'll go ahead and take that? Your only hesitation was you weren't sure if unicorns were harmed? Well, now you know that they're not, so you can use this unicorn horn and not feel bad about it at all. How much can I get you to take home? Yes. Why don't you tell me how much your recipe calls for, and I will measure that out for you, and you can take that home, and then I will tell you how much of this you should probably actually use, as opposed to what the recipe says. And again, you can always add in more and use the entire allotment if you think the potion needs it. So, An ounce? Okay, let me just measure that out for you. Just going to weigh that out. Okay. So you can take that, and I'm just going to put the rest of it back over here, back over there on the shelf. And what else can I get for you? You need some dragon's blood? Okay, does your recipe specify liquid or powdered? Yes, I'm afraid that at the moment, let's see, at the moment all I have is the powdered dragon's blood. Does your recipe specify? No? Okay, well, as long as your recipe does not specify, you can use this in place of liquid blood. Why is it powdered? Well, the potency of liquid blood only lasts about a week or two. So what we do is we dry it and then powder it, and this will last up to a year, so it's a little more shelf stable. As I said, I am out of fresh dragon's blood. Oh no, of course. Again, no dragons are ever harmed in the procurement of dragon's blood. Yeah, we just take a little syringe and pop a little bit out. We have ourselves a lovely herd of dragons that we raise, and so generally when we're doing, medical exams and, checking their claw, filing their claws and checking their feet for stones or, giving them their inoculations, things like that, we'll just take one of the syringes and fill it with a little blood, and, they really don't seem to mind. They barely feel it in that thick skin, so, and then most of it we do dry because it's longer shelf life. We do like to keep a little bit of fresh on the shelves, but the dragon's next medical exam isn't for another month or two, so if you need fresh blood, you would have to wait until then, but as long as you're good with the dried, I can certainly get you some of this. Your recipe does not specify. Okay, yeah. Well, then I would definitely recommend going on ahead and using the powdered. What is the amount in your recipe? An ounce of that as well? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and give you an ounce and a half just because when it is powdered, it's slightly less potent, so I want to make sure that you have enough here. Let me just measure you out an ounce. Okay, there we go. Alright, so you can take that, and I'll just put the dragon's blood back there on the shelf. And what else can I get for you? You'll be needing some snail slime. Alright, I know that we have some of this because I was out collecting yesterday. Alright, so here we are, a whole vial of snail slime. Yes, this is very difficult to collect. It's best collected in the early morning or late evening hours of the day because the slime is less likely to evaporate then. And you literally have to follow snails around as they're crawling across the ground and scoop up the slime afterwards. But it is a very potent ingredient, which is why we keep it on our shelves. There are many recipes that call for it, particularly many older recipes, such as the one that you're using. Yeah, those classic grimoires always call for some very classic ingredients. So how much can I get you of this? And again, fresh collected, very potent, so you're probably going to want to use a little less than what your recipe calls for. Your recipe calls for 3 drops? Okay, well, I'll go ahead and give you the 3 drops, but I would recommend starting with just 1 drop in your potion, and you can add more as needed, okay? Okay, let's see. Do 3 little drops here. recork the rest of that. Pop that back on the shelf. Alright, and there's your snail slime. And what else will you be needing today? A 1/4 ounce of finely chopped gnome beard. Yes, I do have that in stock. Oh, you want to know if there's a substitution? Because you're allergic to gnome beard? Actually, yes. Let me see. This is spiderweb, and this actually works very similarly to gnome beard, particularly since your recipe calls for finely chopped gnome beard. This will have most of the same properties. It might make your potion a little slower than it would be with the gnome beard, but it's only going to alter it by a few days or so. So your riches just might be a few days later than they would be with the gnome beard. So nothing to worry about. It's just going to take a couple days longer, but it will certainly work. Again, just as potent. Yes, of course. All of the spider webs that we collect have been abandoned by the spiders. If you've ever been in an attic or in a forest, it is very easy to find spider webs that have long since been abandoned. You can tell because they're usually, hanging by a single thread. They're not the nice, perfectly shaped webs. They've fallen into disrepair. There's no spiders around that particular web, and it's usually hanging and swirled around into itself, which is why we have this gob of spider web in the bottom here. So yes, again, no spiders harmed. We are very creature conscious at the Applewood Apothecary, so you can use the spider web and not feel bad about it at all. What about the gnome beard? Yes, well, obviously you'll never be using gnome beard if you're that allergic to it, but again, no gnomes are harmed. We actually, on the weekend, we run a gnome barbershop, and we do complimentary beard trimming for gnomes, so it's kind of a win-win situation. The gnomes get their beards trimmed for free, and then we save the clippings to put on the shelves of the apothecary. So again, just kind of a win-win situation. Everybody's happy and no one is harmed by the collection of the ingredients. So, oh, well, thank you. We're very glad that you appreciate our creature-conscious approach here. So, how much gnome beard does your recipe call for? 1/4 ounce? Okay, well, I'm going to give you a 1/2 ounce of the spiderweb, just because it's not quite as potent as I said. So I'll give you a 1/2 ounce of the spiderweb, and you can use that to replace the 1/4 ounce of finely chopped gnome beard. How does that sound? Okay, let's just pop this open and get you your 1/2 ounce of spiderweb. Just weigh that out. Okay. Pop the rest back into our little jar here so that it stays nice and fresh for the next potion brewer. Alright, and then I'll just hand that to you. There you go. And what else will you be needing? Wolfsbane. Okay, classic ingredient, which we always keep in stock because it comes in handy in so many different potions, and it's great to have around in case, you tend to be haunted by werewolves. Let's see, where did I put it? Here we are. Finely chopped wolfsbane. Again, very fresh. We grow our own and harvest our own and dry our own, so you can always rest assured that none of our wolfsbane has been on the shelf for more than a year. Yes, we plant a new crop every single year, so always fresh, always potent. Never have to worry about getting old wolfsbane when you're coming to the Applewood Apothecary. So, How much does your recipe call for? A pound of wolfsbane? Okay, that really is a lot of wolfsbane when you're using the fresh wolfsbane. Some of the older grimoires call for such large quantities because some of the ancient apothecaries didn't always have as fresh ingredients. So that particular recipe is probably expecting the wolfsbane you're using to be 5 years old or so. So since this wolfsbane is not even yet a year old, I'm going to give you a half a pound, and that is going to be probably more than enough. So yeah, I'll give you the half pound, and when you're brewing your potion, I wouldn't even put in the whole half a pound. I'd start with about 3/4 of the half pound, and then you can throw in the rest if the recipe needs it, but you're definitely not going to be needing an entire pound of fresh wolfsbane. So let me just measure some of this out for you. Alright, there you are. Half pound of very potent wolfsbane. Just put the rest back on the shelf. Anything else that you'll be needing? Some mummy dust? Okay, I'm actually going to recommend maybe using fairy dust instead. It's a little bit cheaper, and it works just as good, if not better, than mummy dust. Yes, we collect that much like we collect the snail slime. We just kind of follow the fairies along as they're flying and collect all the sparkly fairy dust trail behind them, so they barely even know we're there most of the time. We're very inobtrusive, very polite, very respectful to the fairies as we collect their little trails of dust, and we've never had any complaints, so I don't think they really mind us. And again, very fresh fairy dust on our shelves we collected last week, and it's a little bit easier to work with than mummy dust as well. It helps keep it a little more liquid, and you really want the potion to stay liquid, because if it thickens too much, it loses its potency, and then your riches might not manifest. So older grimoire recipes have, of course, been updated when people realize there are better ingredients. So unless you have any objections, I would recommend substituting some fairy dust for the mummy dust. You're fine with that? Okay, well, let's go ahead and get you a little fairy dust. Alright, so how much of the fairy dust can I get for you? It calls for a ½ ounce of mummy dust. Okay, well, I'll give you a ½ ounce of fairy dust as well, because again, they are almost interchangeable, but also use a little less than the full measure that I'm going to give you, because our ingredients are very potent. I know I keep repeating that, but it's something I can't stress enough, because we have had people who try to follow old recipes that assume they're using old ingredients, and they've been a little more potent than they were expecting. So I'll give you a ½ ounce of this, use a little less, add in more as needed. Okay, let's just measure that out here. Okay, so there's that. And just a tip, when you're using that, you really want to have it right down next to the cauldron or the pot, whatever you're brewing in. You want to have it right next to that when you dump it in, because fairy dust is very lightweight. It's almost like a vapor. And if you don't have it right next to the brewing container, it might just float away. It might get caught by a breeze and float away. And then, of course, it's very difficult to finish your potion. So have it right next to your brewing pot when you actually add it to the recipe, okay? Okay. And anything else, or do you have everything you need? One more ingredient? Okay, what can I pull from the shelves? Full moon water? Okay, I was actually wondering if that one would come up because that is an extremely potent ingredient and so many of the old grimoire potions call for it. So we always keep that in stock, much like the wolfsbane. So here we are, full moon water. Now the one thing about full moon water is that this is one of the few ingredients where ours is not going to be any more potent than anyone else's. Due to how full moon water is harvested, you really can't call any full moon water fresher than any other. It's going to collect the energy of the moon no matter what. So, and it does have an indefinite shelf life. The only kind of shelf life it has that would expire is if it evaporates. That's really the only way that it loses potency. So, whatever they ask for in the recipe, use exactly that amount of the full moon water. So, how much are they asking for? 10 drops of full moon water? Alright, well, let's get you 10 drops of full moon water then. Alright, just restopper that. Alright, and there is your full moon water. So you should now have all the ingredients needed to make your riches potion. And as I said, when you're brewing this potion, just in case the grimoire didn't mention it, you really want to make sure that it stays in a very fluid, very liquid state, because if it thickens at all, that will be a problem. It will lose potency. If you see it start to thicken at all, throw in a little bit more snail slime, and that should help bring it back to that fluid liquid form. And basically the real secret of that is to just constantly stir it. This is not a potion where you want to, put it over the fire and then walk away and read a book. You really want to stay right with this potion while you're brewing it and stir almost continuously to maintain that very fluid, thin, liquid state. And it's going to really make sure that your potion is super potent and works exactly the way you want it to, and works quickly as well. So, any other questions that I can help you with? Should you brew it during a waxing moon? Absolutely. Anytime you're trying to do any kind of like abundance or riches, you're wanting something to grow. So you do it during the waxing moon when things are going to grow. You want your riches and your abundance to grow. So definitely start it during a waxing moon. And if it's a multi-day brewing potion, make sure that it's finished during the waxing moon too. You want to be brewing the entire thing during the waxing moon. Yeah, sure, you can start it on a new moon. That's totally fine because that is in the waxing stage. So, yep, anytime between the new moon and the full moon, it's the perfect time to brew this potion. So, anything else I can help you with? Okay, well, thank you for coming into the Applewood Apothecary today, and good luck on your potion. We hope to see you again soon.